Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to check out a little piece of my computing history by looking at the Compaq Evo D510 SFF PC. Now, the reason why this machine is so special to me is because this specific model is the first model of PC that I worked on professionally when I began my IT career back in 2002. These were still relatively new at that point, and the organisation I work for was swapping out all their older Compaq Deskpro models with these little nuggets of joy. Enough of the backstory though, let's take a look at this unit in particular. This one looks to be in really good condition except for a couple of chips on the paint on either side, although it could definitely do with a clean. Before I get to that though, I want to get it open and have a good root around inside. This model was produced from late 2001, which puts it right in the middle of the capacitor plague, so I want to get in there and see if any of those capacitors need replacing. To get the cover off, you just press these two catches on either side of the cover and then slide it forward. Then you can lift up this hinge section inside, and that basically gives you easy access to all of the internals. And yep, there's those bulged caps that we all know and love. Luckily, it only appears to be these caps here, so I'll just order replacements and swap those out later. For now, let's look in more detail at this machine and maybe give it a clean up. All of the drives are held in place with these little silver locking tabs. Each drive has these cheesehead screws in the mounting holes that hold them in place unless the locking tab is pulled back. The CD drive dates the system early 2002. This is just a bog standard CD drive, it won't play DVDs or record any media. The floppy drive beneath that was absolutely filthy and probably won't work, but to be honest, on a P4 machine like this, I don't really need it to, so I'll just clean it up and put it back in. On the other side of the hinged section, you can see the spot where an IDE hard disk would be placed. This unit would have originally shipped with a 20GB unit, but I'll probably find something a bit bigger, as the fully patched version of Windows XP that I'm going to use will eat into a large chunk of that space. Next, I pulled out this Pci Riser Card, which randomly also houses the CD audio connector and the chassis intruder detection switch on the top there. This module just allows you to add 2 extra PCI expansion cards to the system. The RAM installed in the motherboard was 128MB of PC133 SD RAM, which is really weird. I've never worked on a Pentium 4 system which didn't support DDR RAM. I had no idea there were chipsets for the P4 architecture which used the older SD RAM standard. Anyway, there are 3 slots available on the board, so I'll have a look in my parts bin later and see if I can bump that up to something more suitable for an XP build. Next, I took a look at the power supply. It's just sort of hooked in there at the back and held in place by the frame and the lid. It's a little bit finicky to get out, but once it's been worked free, it just sort of lifts out. The graphics card in this machine is actually a discrete card, which is a little weird for a business machine. This half-height card connects to an AGP slot on the motherboard, and it's an NVIDIA Vanta 16, which Google tells me is basically a TNT2 based card for lower powered machines. It won't be much good for gaming, but at least it can do some basic Direct3D hardware rendering. The cooling solution for the CPU was a little basic to say the least. There's an aluminium heatsink held in place with these 2 retention clips, and it relies on the case fan at the front to draw in cool air and blow it over the fins, with the help of this little plastic duct. It's a really basic solution, and I worry it's just going to push hot air into the case, where it'll just get trapped or sucked through the PSU on the way to the outside. Once I got the heatsink off and got to the CPU, I confirmed that it's the 1.7 GHz unit that this machine had originally shipped with. Now, although it was absolutely filthy in there, the damage didn't look to be too bad, so I decided to quickly put it back together and power the unit up and see if it at least worked. Big mistake. I didn't catch it on camera, but the power supply basically exploded and it took out the electrics in my workshop. I can't see exactly what failed given how dirty it is inside the PSU, but something definitely wasn't right given the loud bang and flash that came from it. Yeah, it was very nearly an underwear changing moment. Thankfully, these D510 models were really popular and you can still pick up replacement power supplies online for not very much money. Like this reconditioned unit which set me back £35. Yes, that is a lot of money for a reconditioned unit. And no, I don't have a problem. I'm not about to risk any further damage to the system, so before I do anything else, I think it's about time I clean everything up and get on with that recap. The motherboard itself isn't held in place with any screws, it just sort of sits on these standoffs. To get it out, you first have to remove this grub screw on the back and then swing out the rear I/O shield from the case. Then you just push back on the motherboard slightly and with a bit of wiggling it comes free. The inside of the chassis was definitely in need of a good clean, so that got a quick blast with the air blower along with the motherboard. I then gave the inside of the chassis a proper clean with some isopropyl alcohol to really get that caked on grime off, and it actually came up looking really nice overall. Now on to that recap. If you've never swapped out capacitors before, then it can be quite daunting, but if you're familiar with a soldering iron, it's actually not that difficult a job, particularly with this type of capacitor as all the legs go through to the base of the board. One tip I would give you is to take lots of photos before you start. That way, if you ever second guess yourself as to what value capacitor you need to use or which way to orientate it, then you have a record. That last point is very important. Solder one of these bad boys in the wrong way round and you'll be asking for trouble. It doesn't matter too much if you use the exact same make and model of capacitor, so long as the rated capacitance and voltage are the same as the original. Depending on the manufacturer, you might even find the replacements look quite different, but as long as the hole spacings are pretty similar, it doesn't really matter. The only thing I would say is to stay away from budget capacitors from sites like Amazon or eBay. These replacements that I'm using came from a reputable local supplier and I should get many years of use out of them. I would normally recommend that you swap out any capacitors that are bulging, and in addition, any other capacitors of the same type. So I should really be swapping out all of these ones too, but I'm in a hurry and honestly they look just fine. Given how easy it is to disassemble this thing, I could always swap the rest out later. So with this thing recapped and reassembled, it's time to see if it actually works. Here goes. Yay! It actually works. Though that CPU cooling fan sounds like it's seen better days. I think I'll be swapping that one out very soon. I'll get around to that later, but for now, let's set about getting Windows XP installed and see if this thing is any good for gaming. Or I would, if the CD drive actually worked. It doesn't seem to want to read any discs. No matter, I've got plenty of spare black bezel drives laying around, and it's just a case of swapping over those cheesehead screws and slotting it in. Yep, all working now. On to a fresh installation of Windows XP. With that done, it's time to see how this thing copes with running early 2000s games, and, well, it's not great, is it? That Nvidia Vanta really wasn't geared up for this kind of workload. Unreal Tournament 2003 is definitely playable, but only at 320 by 240 pixels, which isn't great. Slightly older games like Max Payne and the original Unreal Tournament work a lot better, so I guess it depends what you would like to use this machine for. If you can lay your hands on a more powerful half-height GPU, then you might have a decent little gaming rig, though I'd worry about putting too much load on that aging power supply. In any case, this is still a really great machine and a testament to Compaq's legacy in the PC space. This is one of the last true Compaq developed machines before they were merged with HP and became essentially a budget brand, and it really shows their commitment to providing truly unique products. These machines were an absolute dream to work on in the early 2000s. I could fully strip and reassemble one of these in less than 10 minutes, and as you saw in the video, swapping out drives takes a fraction of the time needed compared to traditional tower PCs. It's a system that HP still use today in more or less the same form factor. In fact, this ProDesk machine is almost exactly the same shape and size and layout as its great-great-grandfather. I miss Compaq, and I'm very glad to add this PC to my growing collection. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give it a like and perhaps consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. If you've got memories of the D510 line, good or bad, then I'd love to read about them in the comments. And until next time, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.